family, and friends on Africa, My Heritage TV. This is your host, Kwame, African Child. And I'm once again welcoming you to another edition of a celebrated African who needs to be documented for the next generation and posterity to also come and read and to know about. As I'm saying, we are on a mission to tell the African story. As I'm saying, we are on a mission to make sure that the other side of Africa, that people are selling to the international world, that they are not buying, we are going to rewrite it, we are going to repackage it, we are going to rephrase it, and to tell the actual African story that the world needs to hear, and to make sure Africa as a continent, Africans as a people would be respected globally. As I'm saying, the world that we are seeing today in mathematics, the world that we are seeing today in chemistry, the world that we are seeing today in biology, the world that we are seeing today in physics, the world that we are seeing today in finance, the world that we are seeing today in anthropology, the world that we are seeing today in development and everything couldn't have been possible without these proud Africans, whom I'm documenting so that everybody would have the chance to hear and to know about. As I always give the favorite quote, if we don't know where we are coming from as an Africans, we wouldn't know where we are going. We have to know and to admit where we are as an Africans. We have to look back at our mistakes and see how we can correct those mistakes so that in 2022 we don't repeat them. But at the same time, as much as we've learned from the mistakes, we put out the right solution so that Africa we are all dreaming to see will be possible for all of us. This African quote is very powerful. Any generation that are not ready to learn from mistakes, they are destined to repeat them. Any generation that are not ready to learn from mistakes, they are destined to repeat the same mistakes. So in order not to repeat the mistakes of our forebears as a continent, as a people, we have to make sure we'll start telling our own African story. We have to make sure we'll start projecting our own people whom the world or the Western world wouldn't project. I am saying these most proud Africans that I'm mentioning, I'm documenting, most of them are even more deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize, of the Nobel Prize in Physics, Nobel Prize in Chemistry, and so forth. But because sometimes they are Africans, they wouldn't be credited. But we as Africans, even if the Nobel Committee don't credit them, we as an Africans will credit them, and we'll make sure we document them, we'll put their videos out there so that people would come to read, watch, and to know about them, and to also boost their interest and morale in any field of study they want to also pursue. Thank you for joining me once again. And today, we are on another proud African whose interest, whose studies, whose works and contribution has immensely urged many young African youth to also study science. And most important, sometimes we'll just paraphrase the term to be STEM. We'll paraphrase the term to be STEM. And here, what I mean by STEM, I'm going to make sure I'll introduce it to you. And this person that we are about to hear is biography. He contributed enormously to the STEM that we are seeing in Africa, in other part of the world today. And he is no other person than Dr. Azwinndini Muronga. Dr. Azwinndini Muronga. Dr. Azwinndini Muronga from South Africa. So the name again is Dr. Azwinndini Muronga from South Africa. And as I'm saying, even though as much as I'm African, I may not be able to pronounce all the Africans' names perfectly or correctly. So if you're watching me and you are South African and you think I'm mispronouncing the name, or I'm not I'm mentioning the name in the right way that it's supposed to be, forgive me and pardon me for that, because you know most Africans' names are technically difficult to pronounce. So now let's look at his biography. So let's start with the recognition. In recognition of his own past, Azwinndini Muronga has brought STEM enrichment opportunity to youth in remote, underserved towns and villages. Growing up in a government segregated black homeland in South Africa, Azwinndini Muronga began looking after his family livestock at the age of 6. On school days, his mother would take the sheep, goats, and cows to the forest to gaze at noon. When I came back in the afternoon, I would quickly change my school uniform and dash to the forest to take over, he says. It was there that his love for science began. Come sunset, you are starting to take your sheep, your goats, your cows, your herdings home, he says. And from time to time, one of the goats, the sheep, will venture into forest. And you cannot go home without all your livestock. Then you'll be without all your livestock, because you'll be in trouble. He says he found his way. He says he found his ways those nights guided by moon and stars. He was afraid to wander through the dense foliage. But then, the music of the insect from the forest calmed him down. Along with the beauty of the Milky Way, because in the villages you don't have street lights, you can see almost everything, Muronga says. When he arrived home, he completed his homework by candlestick light or paraffin lamp. During high school, Muronga took his books with him to the fields and forests where the livestock gazed. He studied in tall trees where he could see the animals from above and his books in the sunlight. Those studies and those early nights following the stars started him on a path that would eventually lead him across oceans to the United States and Germany, and then back to South Africa, where he is now a Dean of Science at Nelson Mandela University. Muronga was born in 1968, decades before Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first democratically elected president in 1994. Under apartheid, South Africa segregated black South Africans, isolating them in a system of Bantustan or homelands. Muronga was born in Vanda, a homeland in the north of the country, close to borders of Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Botswana. Muronga's mother, who never went to school, sold homeland beer to fund her children's education. Muronga says it took her about a week to get a new batch of beer ready, following many steps to make it really perfect for drinking. He says she relied on her senses, cooking without measurement, but the salt will be right. Without using a book, everything will be just perfect. The sugar will be perfect, the spice will be perfect. Muronga says he never sampled the drink, but the brewing process captured his attention before I knew there was a branch of science called chemistry. It was done at home, he says. Muronga loved mathematics in primary school, but it took a while for him to hear anything about physics, astrophysics, and many other fields of science, he says. Unlike a developed nation where you know about these things even through the TV, in those types of villages, you have got no access to the outside world. Muronga took his first physics class at in Bowie Secondary School in 1986. The course was taught by his high school principal, Aitani Fano Matamba, who happened to have a master's degree in physics, not just physics, theoretical physics, says Muronga. Muronga dreamed of studying medicine after secondary school, but he couldn't secure funding to study at the elite university instead. Inspired by Matamba, he completed a 3-year bachelor's degree in physics at the University of Venda. Toward the end of his degree program, Matamba became a lecturer teaching courses in statistics, physics, and quantum mechanics. Muronga says he felt called toward postgraduate studies, but continuing on in physics would require him to leave Venda, and he had already completed a year of training to be an educator. And as the oldest of 17 children, he was expected to stay in Venda to help with his younger siblings. Chasing dreams. Muronga was promised funding to continue his physics education at the University of Cape Town, about 2,000 kilometers That is more than 1,200 miles away. He decided to go, but he couldn't bear to see his family members' reaction. This pressure mountain was going to be high, he says. So he told one aunt, who agreed to break the news to the rest of the family after he left, that he literally ran away from home. When he arrived in Cape Town, more challenges awaited. He hadn't realized that he needed to apply for housing, so administrators scrambled to help him to find a place. And because he earned his undergraduate degree in the University of Uganda, a historically black university, his education wasn't trusted, he says. Let's look at expanding access about Muronga. Muronga took a role as associate professor of the University of Johannesburg. While there, he helped establish the Soweto Science Center, which he directed for 5 years. The center provides enrichment classes for high school students and professional development programs for teachers. Opening a center in Soweto, a township on the outskirts of Johannesburg, was particularly important to Muronga. During apartheid, the South African government declared that black children must be taught certain subjects in Afrikaans, the language of the descendants of Dutch colonists. On June 16, 1976, students in Soweto protested the decree. The university, in March, he finished his first year term as a dean of science, and his contract was extended for a second 5-year term. One of the achievements was to make sure that the engagement was part and parcel of the faculty. He says, I call it third leg of an African pot. The university is currently drafting its vision for 2030, Muronga says, and the core message there is the university in service of society, all of it. Muronga says he hopes that physicists in the United States and elsewhere, especially those in leadership positions, will think of their role in promoting both science and a more equitable society. For public engagement with science to anchor its roots within institutions of higher learning and research facilities, we need a transformation leadership at all levels, he says. Many factors led Muronga to career in physics. In Venda, his first physics teacher and his excellent professor gave him a good foundation and understanding of the subject. He received financial support that allowed him to continue his education. His thesis and advisor at physicists from the University of Minnesota provided mentorship that encouraged him to push himself further. But to benefit from all these opportunities, he needed to survive long enough to experience them. That wasn't a given, especially for a child growing up in a system that in so many ways chipped away the lives of black people. Today, Azwinndini encourages physicists to find ways to support members of oppressed and marginalized communities, both by offering the inspiration, mentorship, and funding they might need to find their way into physics, but also by countering the system that prevents so many people from even having a chance to try. So, Dr. Muronga, Africa My Heritage TV, showers our praises on you for your leadership spirit, for your undying spirit that has led into many young black people venturing into science, venturing into maths, and venturing into biology. We thank you. You are a proud son of Africa. You are people that we need in Africa. Many young and upcoming Africans need to learn from you. You've led a trail that is clear and visible for all of us to emulate. And thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your extraordinary studies and contribution that you have made for the continent of Africa. All Africa is proud of you, and our history in physics, our history in astrophysics wouldn't be written without your name inside. Thank you for your enormous study, and thank you for boosting the interest and morale of all African children into studying science, or if I'll paraphrase it, STEM. Fellow viewers, followers, and subscribers, this is where we're going to end today's biography on Dr. Muronga from South Africa. Thank you for watching, and thank you for following the channel. I will see you again in the next proud African whose name needs to be mentioned. Thank you.